fragile state when the COVID-19 quarantine hit, which was tragic because that was that was a fun experience. But then moved into supply chain management and logistics. Was able to very successfully implement a number of AI and machine learning uh, implementations there for 3 years that I was there, and now I'm kind of actually back mostly consulting in the uh, financial services fraud detection sort of space, looking primarily at identity fraud. So that is me.
Thank you so much for introduction, Jeremy. And once again, it's really good to have you as always. Also, as we move on, we'll be talking about careers in AI machine learning in 2024. So here, let's start with hottest skills in AI/ML space in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard of Chat GPT, which is probably just the most important, or not important, the most popular example of kind of a large language model and generative AI. But there are a number of different spaces where this type of technology is being used. Hugely transformative. Not only has it transformed, I think, the kind of landscape of what's possible to do in businesses, but I think it very much transformed the sort of like public opinion and public awareness of artificial intelligence. So, made it kind of, I think, more tangible, less mysterious. For some people, less scary. For some people, more scary. But yeah, so all of that generative AI, large language models, very much at the center of a lot of applications and a lot of what I'm doing today. Um, Prompt engineering is very much a part of that. So, really, in order to be able to get the most out of your large language model applications, you have to be very, very careful in what exactly you tell them to do and how exactly you tell them to do it. Um, Kind of outside of that, though, um, yeah, there still is very much a need for, a lot of companies are looking for people to help them with their AI or data strategy overall. Um, you know, they kind of are aware of things like generative AI and large language models, and they know it's powerful. They know it's potentially very useful and could potentially transform their business, but they're not sure exactly how. Right? They're not exactly sure how that kind of thing could be implemented. How does it really work for them? What kind of data do they need? What kind of tech stack or environment do they need? So there's a lot of, I think, kind of exciting stuff to do there in that sort of consulting space. And then yeah, all this other stuff actually, uh, I would say is just what most data scientists do. So deep learning, forecasting, causal inference, which can sometimes be hard because in these models we often find correlations, but correlations and causation are not exactly the same thing. So often difficult to kind of really make causal inferences there. So your ability to do that is often highly valued. Distributed computing and cloud computing, uh, big data technologies, also very, very big. Given the volumes of data that we have to deal with, given the sort of velocities of the machine learning inferences that are required, we do look to the cloud for a lot of technologies there to support that. So, yeah, I would say all of these very accurate lists here, very, very accurate list of hot skills in AI.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking us through the hottest skills in AI/ML in 2024.
Mhm.
For folks, as you can see, there are so many skills Jeremy has basically talked about. Let us know if you are basically learning any of these skills or aspiring to learn any of these skills in the coming year. You can let us know in the chat here. I'll just give you 1 minute in case you want to go through this list. As we've talked about the skills here, we'll be talking about the career paths as well. Basically the career paths which will be trending in 2024 and much more in demand and have been in demand so far as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would say yeah, data scientists and machine learning engineers are always going to be highly in demand, and they're the ones that I think kind of get talked about the most. They're sort of highlighted, I think, the most in this space, um, and that kind of I think leaves data engineers as sort of the unsung heroes of this space. Unfortunately, um, Definitely a very hot job path to go down as well. We absolutely do need lots and lots of capable data engineers, to be sure. In fact, I would go so far as to say, without data engineers around, I probably couldn't do my job. So if I didn't have someone making sure that I had access to reliable data that's well understood, that's fit for purpose, that kind of thing, I would be basically stuck. So yeah, data engineering is always going to be needed. It's always going to be in demand, and I think it's probably just going to become even more so. Um, but then once you kind of have that side of the coin, right? Like the whole point of having data engineers and reliable, well understood data sets is so you can have data scientists, extract insights from them that give you actionable operational decisions. Um, but then once you kind of have, say, a model or an idea, proof of concept, right, for how that kind of thing is going to be used and what kinds of operational decisions can be made from the data, ultimately that must kind of arrive at some kind of software, right? So in order for it to be useful, it can't be something that's like in a white paper or on a whiteboard somewhere. It's got to be software. And so these days, a lot of that part of the kind of life cycle of taking this idea, this proof of concept, and ultimately deploying it, as an enterprise-wide software solution, that very much falls under the purview of the machine learning engineer and the ML ops engineer. So those guys are very, very important as well. Um, and I think probably the hardest one of these to break into, but it's one of the most interesting, is the artificial intelligence researcher and developer. So data scientists, machine learning engineers, they make use of AI and machine learning all the time, but we really are, for the most part, using algorithms or maybe adapting algorithms or kind of, slightly tweaking or building upon algorithms that already exist and that are already out there, already quite well implemented. The AI engineer, or sorry, the AI researcher and developer, they're kind of more on the cutting edge. They're developing these algorithms, publishing papers, things like that, so that the rest of us in the field are kind of aware of these new techniques and what they can do and how to use them. So, um, exceptionally interesting and high paying career path, but I would say also the hardest one to break into as well.
Totally agree. As you were speaking, Jeremy, we actually asked folks who have joined us which AI/ML career path they are aspiring for in 24, and we've gotten few responses here on the chat as well.
Hmm.
I see AI developer is pretty much in demand, and yeah,
Yeah.
a data engineer
Yep.
and AI architect.
Yeah. That one, absolutely. I think, in my time in doing research is probably some of my favorite time I've spent in industry. So yeah, very fun, very lucrative, very interesting. But again, a lot of I would say a lot of hurdles you have to get over, a lot of barriers to entry that your employers or potential employers will kind of look at or will demand when considering you. So yeah, you got your work cut out for you if you want to get into it, but absolutely you shouldn't let that stop you. If you want to do it, you should totally go for it.
Thank you so much for looking through the career paths folks have suggested and are aspiring for. But we have one question by Julie here about which role is the most challenging from, I think, from all what we have discussed, I'm assuming.
Uh, so there, I'm not sure if it's really possible to kind of make an apples to apples comparison about which one is the most challenging. I would say in terms of your kind of like academic requirements, right? Like sort of those sort of barriers to entry. The artificial intelligence researcher and developer is probably the hardest one there. You'll often be expected to have a PhD and some research experience there. Um, so there's that. With data engineering, um, you have to be very, very knowledgeable and experienced with databases, distributed computing systems, things that have dealt with very high volume, high velocity data. You'll have to be aware of all of the different solutions for different varieties of data. So I've encountered people that consider themselves data engineers and they're like basically like very, very good at SQL. They're like SQL ninjas. But there's more to it than just being very, very good at SQL and relational databases, right? You have to be able to deal with like document based databases, vector databases, graph databases. Then you have to be able to recognize when, you know, when are we dealing with data that's appropriate for each type of solution. Um, you'll often have to deal with streams of data from IoT, different edge computing devices and things like that. So yeah, there's quite a bit that goes into data engineering, which I think is partly what makes it so challenging. A friend of mine actually kind of has this like poster that sort of is like all the different technologies that he deals with as a data engineer and what they do, and it's got well over 300 different technologies on it. So it's got like Hadoop, it's got Spark, it's got um, all these different ones: Scoop, Flink, Cassandra. I mean, so there's just this massive library of tools that you have to be very well versed in to be a data engineer. On the other hand, to be a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, there aren't really so many tools that you're going to use. So you don't need this like massive library of tools to do what you do successfully. But the tools that you do use, you do need to understand quite deeply. There's a lot more math in data science. So, like my background, I'm a mathematician. My degree's in mathematics. Not a lot of people like that. So I actually used to. So I've been in this field long enough that when people would ask me, "What do you do?" If I said, "Oh, I'm a data scientist," people would be like, "I have no idea what that means." Nowadays, everyone knows what it means, but back then, I used to introduce myself as a mathematician. So people would be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm a mathematician," and people would be like, "Oh, I hate math." That was like 99% of the time the response I would get. So if you don't like math, the data science category probably not for you, probably not your favorite. But yeah, there's quite a bit of math. You have to be quite aware of sort of like experiment design problems, right? Like sample biases, outliers, different things like that. So that you're kind of aware of any sort of confounding factor, confounding variable that's gone into your study or that's part of your model or anything like that. Because, yeah, it's not as simple as just sort of like dumping data through, some canned model or something like that. I mean, you have to really think carefully about where are the data coming from, how are they related to other things, what do the data really mean about the business process I'm describing and modeling here. Um, so yeah, so they're all, I think, potentially very challenging, but in very different ways. So they're just very different skill sets.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking us through a much more detailed answer for Julie here to
Mhm.
what is exactly the most challenging role. But we are getting a few more questions here. Also, Jeremy, we're live on YouTube as well, and folks there can also ask questions there in the YouTube live chat box as well. So, folks who have joined us on YouTube, please do let us know your questions in the YouTube live chat box and just keep it related to AIML in the program because that is what this webinar is about. And we'll try to address all of your queries from YouTube as well. So as we move on, we have talked about the skills here. We have talked about the career paths you can take up in 2024. So what exactly is stopping you from becoming an AIML practitioner and also an expert? So you can see a quick poll launched on your screen. So you're here because obviously you're interested in a career in AIML as we saw so many responses of what career path you're already aspiring for in 2024. So through this poll, we would love to understand what is the biggest challenge you're facing when it comes to aspiring for a career in AIML or becoming an AIML expert. So this is a multiple choice poll question. As you can see, you can select multiple options because there can be multiple basically challenges or concerns, right? And also for folks who have joined us on YouTube, can let us know on the YouTube live chat box. If this basically covers your concern, I'll just read out these options for you as folks are already sharing the responses for the poll here on Zoom. So the first one here is, I can't find a program with a fully comprehensive curriculum. Second one, I don't have the practical exposure I need to become job ready. I find it difficult to learn from pre-recorded videos, the third one. And the last one, my work schedule won't allow me enough time for learning. So if this covers your response, you can basically select it from the poll here. But if it does not cover your response, you can let us know in the Q&A box if you have any other concerns here. When basically comes to aspiring for a career in AIML, what challenge you're facing exactly. So as you were speaking, we can see that most of the folks have shared the responses for the poll, but I think we'll just give 5 seconds more for a few of the folks who are still responding to the poll. And also, I am keeping an eye on the YouTube live chat box. If you have any questions for folks who have joined live on YouTube as well, you can let us know. We'll take questions from there as well. Awesome. I think I see most of the folks have responded for the poll. So let me just quickly end the poll in 5 seconds. Last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me quickly end the poll and also share the results with you folks. As we can see that 53% of the folks have voted for I can't find a program with the fully comprehensive curriculum. And we can see that 48% of the folks have voted for I wouldn't get the practical exposure I need to become job ready. 33% of the folks have voted for my work schedule won't allow me enough time for learning. And 15% of the folks have voted for I find it difficult to learn from pre-recorded videos. And few responses from the YouTube live chat box as well. So that's great. Let me move on to the program introduction here quickly. So we have interesting program review lined up for you as promised, and we'll be moving towards the program review of the UT Dallas AIML Learning Bootcamp. So the UT Dallas AIML Bootcamp comes with a comprehensive and industrial and learning path. You get access to integrated hands-on labs and projects which you can work on and choose to work on from caption project as well. You get access to online live virtual classrooms. So not just pre-recorded videos, you get a live virtual classroom where you can interact with the instructor, and it's pretty engaging. And also the program of basically duration is of 6 months, and you can just complete it by giving 10 to 15 hours per week, which basically makes it very flexible for folks who are working professionals, which we saw in the starting when we basically asked for the experience poll, right? And the learning format again will be online and also a live instructor interaction, which I told you about. At the end of it all, you get a UT Academic Excellence Bootcamp certificate, which you can see on the screen here. And also the core and elective course certificates. Also, you get to be a part of the UT Dallas Circle membership and also a recognition and an online convocation. So now the online convocation part makes it pretty interesting because you not just basically not just get to invite your closest family or friends, but you can invite your basically all of the friends and basically far relatives as well to attend your convocation. So that makes it pretty interesting to get first of all degree like from UT Dallas and also other core and relative courses as well, which you get access to. So now let's talk about the UT Dallas advantage here. So UT Dallas, University of Texas at Dallas, is a renowned institution with a rich history of academic excellence. It is a home to distinguished faculty members and researchers fostering an environment of innovation and learning. It is consistently recognized as a top-tier research university, providing students with access to cutting-edge knowledge and resources. And having a UT Dallas basically certificate on your CV is highly respected and acknowledged globally, which basically will open doors to diverse career opportunities and networks. A lot of these career paths which we talked about. Now, moving on, I think for folks who have voted that they are basically currently studying, this is like eligibility and prerequisites for them as well to know that they can join this program. You need to just have a high school diploma or equivalent and be at least 18 years of age in case you are in doubt. And also prior experience in or knowledge of mathematics and programming is required. Also, you need to have 2 or more years of work experience, which is preferred. And Basically, I just have a question from the audience here. I think, Jeremy, they might be curious about this. It says that prior experience in mathematics, prior experience in or knowledge of mathematics and programming. So,
Hmm.
what kind of experience or knowledge are we expecting folks to have before they join?
So I think before they join, rather minimal, probably just classical algebra, some things like that are sort of what you're expected to have coming in. There actually is a math primer that is offered for machine learning. Um, it's not part of the actual sort of like, core sequence of the program, but it's something else that's just kind of offered if you, need to take it. Um, but what that will cover, if you want to, really be able to understand and utilize AI and machine learning, will cover probability and statistics. Um, to be honest, we actually deal with probability distributions in uh, quite high dimensional spaces as well. Um, so, kind of higher dimensional statistics and probability, Bayesian statistics, especially. Um, then, in order to be able to kind of understand kind of how we do a lot of our computations efficiently, and also like what do I mean by like higher dimensional, right? So that's the thing that a lot of people who don't have a lot of background in mathematics, like we live in this universe that is at least apparently three dimensions, and so what does it mean for something to have like a large number of dimensions? um, Linear algebra is actually the area of math that defines that for you, helps you understand what that means, and then also gives you kind of the this knowledge of like matrices, vectors. What do those kinds of computations look like with those types of objects? Why is that so efficient, right? Like, why do we like doing things that way in mathematics and in machine learning? Then there's also some differential multivariable calculus that's involved in machine learning. So ultimately, the way that we optimize these algorithms involves taking derivatives in multiple dimensions. The actual word for that is we call it a gradient. So there's some work that needs to go into knowing how to calculate these gradients, although that I would say is probably maybe the least essential math skill that you'll need unless you're actually doing research. If you're actually doing research, you will need to know how to do that. You'll need to be able to calculate those gradients. If you're someone who more just utilizes models that other people have designed, there are lots of software packages out there that do auto differentiation so that once you kind of have just set up your model and the overall structure of your model, all of the gradients are actually calculated automatically by the software. So whether you need to know that or not kind of depends on what path in AI or machine learning you're really choosing to follow.
Thank you for answering that. I hope that answers a lot of your questions you might have in mind related to having knowledge in mathematics and programming. Please do let us know if you have any questions, more questions related to that in the Q&A box. And also, we've started getting a lot of questions in the Q&A box. That's great. We'll address your queries as soon as possible. Whenever we get the time. And also for folks who have joined us on YouTube, can also let us know if you have any questions. We'll take it from there as well. So let's talk about how this program prepares you. So I think someone did ask that how exactly it works, right? How do we build these skills to this program? So let's talk about how the program builds the AI/ML skills step by step.
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, starting at the bottom, this is sort of where we begin. So there's a sort of an orientation session. You can think of this as almost like syllabus week, right? Like just kind of laying the ground rules, helping you understand like what can you expect from the program, what does the program expect from you, um, how do you go about getting help, all of that kind of stuff, right? So there's sort of this just higher level introduction. Then we get into the introduction to artificial intelligence, which helps you kind of understand a bit of its history. Where did it come from? How has it developed? A little bit of kind of the cycles. So I think fair to say at this moment we're kind of in a bit of a hype cycle around artificial intelligence. Not the first one. So artificial intelligence has been hyped since the early 1960s, to be sure. Um, and it's kind of gone in these waves, right? We kind of go in these periods where like people are just, way overhyped about it, and then no, we hit a wall or we hit a limitation of what we're currently capable of, and then interest drops off, and then no one cares about it for a while, and then we have some breakthrough, and then it comes roaring back, and then we have all this wild speculation and hype about it. So I think it's important to understand that that's talked about a little bit. Then we get into applied data science, with Python. So this is some of the really practical stuff that no matter what area in, AI or machine learning you pursue, you will need to know some of these skills, things like data preparation, so like standardization, normalization of data, dealing with missing values, which break most models, outliers, right? Things like that, right? Like, so all of the kind of proper techniques for dealing with those types of things. Um, then the course on machine learning is a, I think, very good sort of general introduction to machine learning. And this, I would say, you could call this more like classical machine learning. So this gets you into some of the really foundational models like linear regression, logistic regression, perceptrons and support vector machines, decision trees, random forests. I believe we also talk about naive Bayes classifiers. So basically a lot of these kind of like very foundational models that you really just, if you want to be able to call yourself a data scientist or an AI ML professional, you just need to know about this stuff. Then in the next course, we get into deep learning with Keras and TensorFlow. So by deep learning, we specifically mean deep artificial neural networks. We help you define like what does that even mean? Like what do we mean by that? And then how do we build these things? And primarily we use TensorFlow and Keras, which used to be kind of a separate package, but has actually been incorporated into TensorFlow since 2.0. We're at like 2.15 now. But yeah, since 2.0, Keras has actually been integrated as sort of the primary syntax or API for TensorFlow. So this is sort of the industry gold standard for implementing deep learning solutions. Then we kind of take that a little bit further and get into essentials of generative AI, prompt engineering, and Chat GPT. This particular course doesn't get so much into like the deeper theory of how a lot of these models work. You'll have kind of a beginning, a sort of like foundation of how to understand it, because these are ultimately deep neural networks uh, with a lot of different other techniques incorporated into them, things like attention mechanisms and stuff like that. So we won't get into that sort of stuff, right? Those sort of deeper topics, but just some ideas of, you know, what do these things do? What are they capable of? What are they maybe not so good at? How do you kind of squeeze more out of them, especially with the prompt engineering part? Because, the same model, uh, like say, GPT 3.5 or 3.5 Turbo may give you something totally, you know, perfect and useful for what you want to do, or it may give you absolute garbage, kind of depending on how you ask for it. So the prompt engineering is like actually a very key skill set to have when dealing with these types of models. And then finally, you get into the capstone project, which helps you kind of take everything you've learned throughout the whole entire boot camp and bring it together in a very much, kind of work like, real world hands-on type of project, so that you can really kind of, transition from sort of book learning or, sort of book knowledge to actual hands-on experience. And that makes up the core of the program itself. You'll notice kind of down on the bottom right, we have some elective options as well. You don't have to take these if you don't want to, or if your schedule is, too tight or whatever. But if you would like, you're actually allowed to take these electives. I strongly recommend that you do, because there's a lot of value in there. So you can get into, um, so it says like advanced deep learning and machine vision or computer vision. If you'd like to kind of specialize in that area, excellent class to take. Natural language processing and speech recognition, also excellent specialty to kind of go into. Reinforcement learning. Um, People that actually are professionals in machine learning and AI, to be honest with you, I would say about 80% of them are quite good at supervised machine learning, which you'll know more about exactly what that means after you've taken the course. But, um, so there are a lot more of them that know about supervised machine learning and a little bit about unsupervised machine learning. Reinforcement learning is something that not very many professionals actually know about or have experience with, but it is essential to certain industry sectors. So, like robotics, video games, right? So, like the sort of adversarial AI that you're up against when you're playing a video game. But also in finance, right? So, like algorithmic trading. a lot of these sort of trading bots, which these days more money is actually being managed, as we say, passively, right, or by machines than there are funds being managed by humans. And the most successful algorithms in this space actually are reinforcement learning algorithms, where the machine actually kind of learns more and more about kind of how to play the game that it's playing, and learns from its mistakes, learns from its successes, and gets better and better at what it's supposed to do over time. So very essential, you know, skill set within machine learning that again not very many people have, and that it exists in some highly lucrative spaces. So if you've got time, that's me personally, that's the one I would recommend you check out in the electives, is the reinforcement learning course. But again, depends on what you actually want to go into, but that's the one that I think is kind of the coolest.
Um, Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking through the steps here, how this program basically builds their skills step by step. Also, I think you've already mentioned about the electives. So electives come as a part of the program, but they are completely optional. We don't charge anything extra for that. It is up to you if you want to take it up as per your interest. And as we move on, the tools and platforms you'll be learning in the Utilitas AI/ML Bootcamp as well. As you can see, so many tools and platforms we cover in this particular course. Maybe Jeremy, you can show some light on these tools for folks who might not have that much idea about these particular tools, which they will
Mhm.
learn in AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few different programming languages that might come up in a conversation around data science or even machine learning and AI. Things like R. I've actually strangely seen some things implemented in like MATLAB or GNU Octave, but really the language that is the sort of clear leader at this moment, the sort of de facto lingua franca, as they say, for machine learning is Python 100%. So odds are, if you're doing anything in AI and machine learning, you're using Python. Uh, Within the data science world, there's actually a particular stack of packages that make up the core of what we do. That's referred to as the NumPy stack, um, which includes Matplotlib, but it's four packages primarily. So it's NumPy itself, which very cleanly gives us, they call it an array, but basically it's a vector, a matrix, or higher rank tensors, right? So it gives you that sort of data representation within Python. SciPy, which actually has all kinds of, it's sort of this catch-all toolbox for any kind of scientific computing. So a lot of the uh, probability distributions, statistical tests, signal processing. There's a lot of signal processing stuff in there, which we use a lot. Things like convolution or low pass filters, things like that, that come up in different applications. And then we get pandas, which gives us access to data frames. So other solutions like R actually natively have a data frame as just a native data structure. Python actually does not have that. So the pandas package actually gives you a very robust implementation of a data frame. And then Matplotlib is actually our sort of core package for making visualizations. So, which is the thing we do all the time, because as a data scientist yourself, you have to make visualizations just for yourself to understand what's happening in the data set you're working with. But then also, that's really your most effective tool for how you convey to other people like what you found and what you've understood in the data. So that's very big. Top right corner, we have the NLTK, or the Natural Language Toolkit. That one, as well as OpenCV, are a bit more niche. So if you go into the specialty of either natural language processing or computer vision, you'll use one or the other of these, right? So you'll use either the Natural Language Toolkit or the OpenCV or Open Computer Vision library. Um, then you have bottom right corner. Let's talk about that. Scikit-learn, excellent package. It has very robust, very fast implementations of, I would say, every basically commoditized machine learning model that's out there, so that you have lots of really great ways to implement those. TensorFlow and Keras, we've already talked about. Those are great for deep learning. And then Flask and Django actually are, they're kind of an alternative. So you're either going to use Flask or you're going to use Django. They get used a lot by web developers, but why we care about them in data science is because Either one of them is actually a great way to build an API. So you won't always necessarily deploy your models via APIs. It depends on what the need is, right? Depends on exactly how it's going to be consumed or used by people that need it or systems that need it. But quite often, your deployment is going to be very event driven. So, it's like when this thing happens, we need to be able to then ask the model what to do. So your model is going to live in an API that, a call gets made to that API, and then your model makes a response and that comes back. So those, either one of those are going to be what you use to do that.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking us through the tools and platforms here. I
Mhm.
think you also answered the question by Heronia why we used Python in AI developments while you were answering that as well. So
Mhm.
you covered that. We do have more questions about AI. In general, we'll take those. And also, let's talk about the capstone projects as well they get to work on through this UTLS AIML bootcamp, which they can showcase to their future employers, mimicking real life business scenarios for true experience. Also, adding this to your portfolio basically gives you that kind of experience which you don't have if you don't come from an AIML background. Also, you get to choose from several domains, the project you get to work on in Capstone. I just have a question that how does having a capstone project or also the industry-based projects which we have in this program, how does it exactly help? Like when they basically are done with the program and they start working on these portfolio projects for someone who does not have any experience in AIML, which we see a lot of them, right, who have joined us here in YouTube as well, who are live with us.
Yep, absolutely. Um, let's see here. I'm sorry, I was answering a question in the Q&A. What was your specific question?
Yeah, I was just asking that we have gotten folks in YouTube as well who basically are asking, Raja Yadav is asking, is it good for non-IT background guys as well? So
Oh yeah.
yeah, now this basically a follow-up question with that for folks who basically have no experience in IT or AIML sector, how do they showcase their real basically live experience through these projects from the program? How does it exactly help having these projects?
Yeah. So, I mean, in order to be able to do the project, you're going to have learned Python and learn it well enough to implement the machine learning solution in Python. So, I mean, the fact that you have completed the capstone and completed the boot camp would mean that you know enough about Python to actually implement one of these solutions. So, absolutely, it would demonstrate that you've picked that skill set up, which is important. I think you can come in easily with sort of limited or minimal IT experience. I actually have often said about data science specifically that we're not necessarily, well, like, we're not exactly IT. We often just sort of get lumped in with IT in a given organization because there's not really a place that's better to fit us in. But we're more IT adjacent than IT specifically. Again, we're kind of more, mathematicians and problem solvers, right? Like, so far more than, you know the programming or anything like that. I care far more about understanding the actual business problem, um, and then giving it a formal mathematical structure so that we know, what are we after, what does success look like, how do we measure it, uh, what are the specific inputs and outputs to the problem, all of that kind of stuff. That's far more important to you as a data scientist than any of the deeper IT stuff. And really, you only care about that because, again, in order for the thing to be useful, it does need to be implemented as software. um, how much you'll have to do that, to be honest, really depends on the organization you go into. So there are some organizations I've worked with where if your job title is data scientist, right, you're called the data scientist, you are expected to be able to implement your own algorithm, right? So it's like in some organizations they don't really separate out the roles between like machine learning engineer, ML ops engineer and data scientist. It's like if you're the data scientist, you do all of it. So if you work for an organization like that, yeah, you'll need a pretty robust IT background, and you'll need to be a very strong programmer and developer. But I've also worked for organizations where They essentially allow their data science team to basically be a bunch of mathematicians. You're kind of more like an operations researcher, applied mathematician, kind of professional. You really are just thinking about the problem and mathematically what is the optimal solution. Um, Maybe you'll write up a white paper that describes it. Maybe you'll code up like a proof of concept that just logically shows like, hey, this idea is correct, this is working. And then at that point you will hand it off to someone else with a much deeper IT background who is going to then go implement the thing that you came up with. So I don't think that there's like, it would be nice if there was just like a clean answer, if I could just tell you like, oh, you have to have exactly this much Python experience, right? But truth is, the industry isn't really homogenized enough for me to tell you. So some places will expect you to have a lot. They'll expect you to be very, very proficient with Python, and not just with Python, but with tools like Docker, with cloud technologies, all of that kind of stuff, because they'll expect you to actually build and maintain your own deployments. Um, but if you're not into that at all, if you're just like, look, that's not my background, that seems like a very hard thing for me to learn. Um, I just want to be like a mathematician and a problem solver. There are organizations that are totally happy to have you come in and do that as well. So it just depends on, what kind of company you're looking at. And I think that also is an important thing for you to think about as you're looking for a job in this space, right? A lot of the time, people just worry about like answering interview questions correctly. But remember, like you're also kind of interviewing the company, right? Like you're kind of interviewing them to see if you want to work for them or to see if it's a good fit on your side. And so that's the thing that you need to kind of nail down with them as well. Like if you're really looking for that role where you're not necessarily this like really deep IT professional, you just you're a little more on the mathematical side, then I think it's kind of you're sort of obliged then to ask them about what are the expectations as far as that goes, right? Do I have to deploy my own stuff? Do I have to maintain all those deployments? Do I have to build APIs? Do I have to like, build software containers, all that kind of stuff, or can I just build models, right? So, and again, if they say like, yeah, we expect you to build all that stuff, you probably won't get that job, but you probably don't want that job either. So on the other hand, if you're like, yeah, that sounds great, that's exactly what I want to do, then that's a good fit, right? So it's kind of about finding the company where their expectation for what a data scientist is matches up, nicely with your expectations about what a data scientist is.
Thank you so much for answering that, Jamie. As we
Mhm.
move on, I think we have talked about how exactly having a capstone project and other industry aligned projects basically helps your portfolio when we come from a completely a non-IT or non-AIML background as well. So we have these basically projects comprising of human resources, e-commerce, automobile, food service, healthcare, and many more industry aligned projects which we cover in this program, which you basically get to choose to work on. And as we've talked about the program a lot, we'll be taking you through the learning environment of the UTLS AIML bootcamp as well. So, Jeremy, you can feel free to share your screen. And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, I'll just look through the questions we have gotten because gotten plenty of questions on the YouTube as well, which we can answer as well.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and take you guys through the environment here. All right, you able to see that, Russia?
Yeah, it's visible. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's see. So I've been attached to a couple. This one's probably the closest to what we're talking about here. Yeah, when you, I guess, first log in, you'll land at something like this. Many of you will just have the one boot camp that you're in. So then you just click on that, and then this takes you to sort of the dashboard of what it looks like. So I mentioned prerequisites. So if you need kind of a refresher on programming or on math. I don't know if the program refresher will really be um, necessary for this particular boot camp that we're talking about. I don't think you're expected to have any prior programming experience, but yeah. So if you need kind of a refresher on the math, that'll be there. Then in terms of the actual courses, um, they'll be listed here in order. Again, this course list is not exactly the same as what we talked about. It actually will be what we talked about in the slides, but you have sort of the introduction to the boot camp, the introduction to artificial intelligence, and then your other particular courses, which again, these are not exactly the same, but very, very close. And then finally, this goes into the capstone. In terms of like what a specific course looks like, let's see here. So you have your self-learning here, which gives you all kinds of videos that you can watch. My advice is that you actually can kind of watch these in advance of showing up for class, so it makes it so that you're kind of already a little bit familiar with the subject matter that's about to be covered. When it's time for your live class, you click on this little tab here. It'll actually have, so this session currently isn't running, but you'll have all the dates that you'll have classes along with the time. And then when it's time to actually log into class, there'll be this big blue button down here at the bottom that says attend class. So you'll actually jump in. Oh, this is more like what it'll look like if we look at past classes. So you'll kind of have all these calendar things here. We may have classes get moved around for holiday considerations, like we had Labor Day here for this course. But yeah, then you'll have your attend class button down here. All of your assessments and data sets you'll have access to also down here. Then we also have a lab environment. Let's see if this one still has anything in it. I may have. All right, so that's coming up. So this is actually our Jupyter Lab environment. When I'm teaching, I often take people through, kind of the implementation of the model live. So once we've kind of learned the math of how it works and how do we set up, how do we pre-process the data, all of that kind of stuff, then we'll actually just go ahead and implement that in Python right here live in the lab. Also, though, for your assignments and projects and things like that, you'll have data sets to work with, and so this is sort of the area where you'll. Oh, good. I just do have this in here still. I keep seeing a message that this is going to go away, and it keeps being here. That's awesome. Uh, so, yeah. So basically, this makes it so that you don't really have to worry at all about setting up an environment yourself. So you don't have to think about like your Python version or any of your package dependencies or any of that. Like you already have a nice robust environment that's been set up for you in here so that it's all working and everything like that. But yeah, this in this particular notebook, this was an example of us going through and building a couple of different things. So we built the feed forward artificial neural network here, and actually this is a class definition, so you'll learn more about this in the boot camp, but this is an actual like proper object oriented implementation of the model so that this has all of its methods that it needs for fitting to data, for getting predictions, all that kind of stuff. We also did build an autoencoder, which is a specific architecture for unsupervised learning. A lot of very useful applications. Gave a little example of, so there's a type of regularization that we use in deep learning called dropout. I particularly here implemented what's called inverted dropout. I like inverted dropout myself. But there's also just dropout. So showed them what the code would have looked like if we had just done, vanilla dropout. Then, yep, actually, so I guess in the version of this notebook we hadn't finished out, but then went ahead and simulated some data, classification data set, and then shows how we then take our class implementation, fit the model to the data, get predictions out of it, and then we also do a regression example. And then for comparison, we actually look at what does this regression look like if we use linear regression with an exponential basis. Again, to kind of do some comparisons in terms of like how accurate these two models are relative to each other, but also how kind of intensive is the whole exercise of training the two models, right? You'll find that the deep neural network is quite a bit more work to train than linear regression. So you kind of have to make the assessment yourself about, um, you know, is it more accurate enough that it's worth the extra overhead and the extra hassle to develop it, all of that kind of, and to train it and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So as you can see, we kind of really do get into it in here. So, and then finally, when you complete it, you get your certificate. Mine is locked because I haven't completed this course as a student. I've just taught it as all. So, yep. So that is our whole entire. Oh, that's not our whole entire uh, environment as well. We also have the community. So if you need help, have any questions, things like that, then you can go ahead and ask for help on here. I do watch this as well, so if any of my students have posted anything on here, then I kind of find their questions, or if I have something like a notebook, like the one that we were just showing, and everybody kind of wants to be able to tinker, play around with it, maybe modify it a bit. I'll go ahead and post it on the community board here so that people can kind of have access to the notebook that I wrote in class and then mess with it themselves. So, yep. So that is it. That is our learning environment. I'll go ahead and give it back to you, Russia.
Sure, Jimmy. Thank you so much for taking us through the learning environment of the UTLS AI/ML Bootcamp. We do have few questions to answer, but let's quickly take them through the learner outcomes here. So the previous classes have consisted of learners from world-class organizations and diverse industries. Industries like IT, software product manufacturing, pharma, healthcare, BFSI, and many others. And also they come from companies like SAP, Godrej, Wells Fargo, Target, Boeing, HP, IBM, Siemens, Infosys, and many other world-class organizations they basically join us from. Also, Simplilearn provides a career assist service as well, which helps you with your job search. You get access to free access to expert webinars and career events with industry leaders. You get options to choose from real world projects across industries and create a portfolio of projects, which we discuss pretty much in detail. And also the job assist services in association with Talent Inc. That starts at the bootcamp completion and is valid for 6 months from basically when you start once you've completed the bootcamp. So we have talked about the skills here, we have talked about the career paths here. We do have one interesting question on the YouTube live chat box. I'll just read it out for you, Jeremy. So Rakesh here is asking, after dedicating 15 years into the IT field, I am contemplating a career shift towards emerging technologies like ML and AI. Would such a transition be beneficial for my career?
So I would say that's difficult to say without knowing more about your specific, situation and things like that. But I would say you're certainly not alone. A lot of people that I have talked to have been, in the IT, DevOps, software engineering, that kind of thing. They've been in a lot of spaces in IT, and for whatever reason, either because of opportunity or salary, terminal salary comparisons that they've done, things like that, they've ultimately decided to get into data science and artificial intelligence. So, uh, yeah, so I would say you're certainly not alone in considering that. Whether or not it's actually beneficial depends on whether it would be beneficial for you specifically depends on where you're currently at, like kind of what level have you kind of reached in your career in IT. What are your sort of like prospects and sort of in terms of like where else could you go, uh, versus what do you kind of choose to do within data science and ML. I think there are a lot of people that kind of make the transition to data science, uh, how would I say this? Rather haphazardly. Um, so, it's like they just kind of look at it and they think something like, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. I don't even know if these are like real numbers, but they'll look at it and be like, oh, I'm making like 80,000 a year doing what I'm doing, and I could make like 130,000 a year being a data scientist. I'd rather make $130,000 a year, so I'll do that. And then they don't really think too much about like, well, as a data scientist, you're essentially like an applied mathematician with some computer science, you know, stuff thrown in there for good measure. And they get in there and they're kind of like, oh, I hate math, but I still want to do this. And there are a lot of people out there today, unfortunately, and you're all competing with these people on the job market that, you know, list themselves as data scientists on their resume, on their LinkedIn, on whatever else. You know, they're claiming to be data scientists, but frankly, they just want to make more money. They don't actually enjoy data science work or being a data scientist. They've cut a lot of corners and things like that. So, you know, to be honest, I don't think those individuals go very far. I think their employers find out rather quickly that they, you know, don't really uh, do great work, that they don't really enjoy, you know, the kind of daily grind of being a data scientist. Uh, so yeah, I think if you approach it that way or get into it that way, if it's more just about the money, uh, probably just stay where you are, you know, or you know, kind of continue down the path that you're on the other hand, though, if things like, you know, being an applied mathematician, solving business problems in that way, uh, if that's all really fascinating and interesting and cool to you, then yeah, I think you're going to have a great time being a data scientist and, you know, an AI ML professional. Um, you know, and if there is more money, then it's just sort of the icing on the cake, you know? So that's my opinion about it.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for answering that. I hope, Rakesh, it answers your question. We do have one more question from Parul Hill. It's about the program as well, and she's sharing a little bit about her experience as well. I've shared it on chat with you as well.
Mhm.
Parul is asking saying that I have 20 years of coding experience and currently working on RPA technology. What AIML is course is good for me? Should I go for a 6 month certificate course or a degree course? 6 months, like the Utilities AIML bootcamp, which we're talking about. And also has a follow up question as well. How much time will be spending on the tools and the platforms in the bootcamp of Utilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the split in terms of like theory versus like tools, uh it's probably, it leans a little more toward the tools. It's probably about a 60-40 split, I would say. You do need to learn some of the theory because there's more to it than just like the syntax. To be honest, there are tools out there like scikit-learn that have made it ridiculously easy from a syntax perspective. You just really need to know mostly the name of the algorithm that you want to build, right? So if it's say linear regression, there's literally just a linear regression constructor, uh, and then you have the data in the right format, and then you just, once you've created an instance of your linear regression class, then there's a dot fit method. You feed the data in and it fits the model to the data, and then you need predictions, and so there's a dot predict method, and literally everything in scikit-learn follows this syntax. So it's like the using the tool, uh, at least in that sense, is quite simple and very straightforward and not hard to learn. The better question is, again, all of the kind of theory for what is this actually doing? What are the assumptions from a statistical perspective that I'm making about the data by fitting this model? Does the data set actually fit those assumptions? If it doesn't, is there something I can do about that? Do I have missing data, you know, missing observations? Do I have, or incomplete observations? Do I have outliers? Um, you know, what do I do about that? Um, you know, if I just throw out things that are outliers or that are missing, am I biasing my study in some way? Am I going to be confounding, you know, confounding my study, or giving bad predictions with my model? Uh, have I ensured that I'm actually getting solid out of sample performance, right? Because it's all well and good to have your model be performing well against the training data, but then you're going to actually deploy this thing, and your model's going to have to make accurate predictions on new observations it's never seen before. So, uh, is your model going to be able to generalize beyond the training data, as we say? These are all things that are important to know. So it's very, very important to know about the theory. The tools, I would say, we definitely cover them. Absolutely, we do. Uh, but I wouldn't stress so much about that part of it. That part's actually, I think, a lot simpler than you're anticipating.
Thank you so much for answering that, Jeremy. Parul, I hope that answers your question. Please do let us know if you have any follow up questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. So as we have talked about the skills here, we've talked about the projects here. We also have job assist services by Talenting, which I've mentioned earlier, which gives you access to the job portal Resume Rabbit, and the resume review and rewrite services by Top Resume, and also a one-on-one interview service from Top Resume as well. So as we have talked about the skills here, the career paths, we have talked about the capstone projects which you can add to your portfolio. We've talked about a lot of industry-based projects you get to work on and just choose from which you want to work on as a part of the elective of the program as well. We have talked about the tools and platforms we'll be covering in this UT AIML bootcamp as well, which is of 6 months duration. So basically, you can let us know your interest in a quick poll, which I have just launched right now. Are you interested in enrolling into the UT AIML bootcamp? So you can select all the option yes in case you're interested. And meanwhile, folks who are sharing interest towards enrollment into the UT AIML bootcamp, I'll be taking through the enrollment steps of the program and also the upcoming cohorts and also the program fee for the UT AIML bootcamp. As I'm speaking, I see a lot of interest coming towards enrollment, so that's great. Folks, I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to basically share your responses for the poll here, where you can let us know your interest. And based on that, we can reach out to you with the admissions offer letter from Simplilearn via UTLS. Meanwhile, as you're sharing your response for the poll here, Jeremy, we do have one more question. If you can see on the chat here, I've shared it from the Q&A box. I'm not able to make out the name of the person, but I'm just going to read out the question this person has. How long is basically the ML program for someone without prior knowledge of Python or any other programming language skill?
Let's see. So the program, I mean, is as long as it is. I think maybe your question might just be about kind of uh, how well are you going to be able to kind of like survive in the program if you have like no programming experience. I have had students who came in with no programming experience at all, or they're in a situation where they're like, oh, I did some programming like 20 years ago when I was in school, but I haven't done any programming since then, so I'm basically starting over. um, that can be a challenge, to be sure. uh, and that's the thing that you kind of have to evaluate for yourself, if you're going to have the time, if you're going to have the extra time and the energy to kind of put into catching yourself up. So yeah, I've seen people absolutely succeed coming in without any prior programming experience or anything like that, but they definitely have to put in a bit of extra work to catch themselves up in that particular area. So it can be hard. It certainly is harder if you don't have the programming experience, but 100% doable. And if you take advantage as well of things like office hours, things like that, your instructor absolutely can take the time to help you kind of get up to speed as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much for answering that. I hope that answers your question. Please do let us know if you have any follow-up question for us in the Q&A box. Also, folks, as you can see, I'll give 10 seconds more for the folks here because I see the polls are still moving. So you can see a quick poll on your screen here where we would love to know your interest in enrolling into the UTLS AIML Bootcamp. And as we're taking more questions, which we have gotten from the Zoom Q&A box here and also from the YouTube live chat box. So we have one more interesting question. I'm not able to make out name from the username, but interesting question. And saying that I am more than willing to learn to get into this field. Would my experience within cybersecurity help me with the bootcamp?
Absolutely, I would say that would help. And not only would that help you with the boot camp, but I think that actually gives you kind of, if you're still interested in cybersecurity, like if you find that kind of thing interesting and cool, um, AI and machine learning actually are heavily applied to that space. Um, so I think picking up AI and machine learning as part of your skill set and your toolbox, uh, and kind of having a focus on that area is, I think, a killer route to go down. They're very very lucrative, very exciting, very fun. Um, so it's a lot of the same, or very similar, I would say, to where I'm at, where I'm looking into identity fraud, using AI and ML to detect identity fraud in new account applications and things like that. Um, you're actually more looking for things like fraudulent login attempts. So if someone's trying to say do like a credential stuffing attack against the login portal, you can absolutely train AI and ML solutions to detect that kind of thing and cut the traffic off, um, things like that. So yeah, if you are already a specialist in that area, and then you want to learn how to take AI and ML and apply it to that area, like that's huge. I think that's going to be, a thing that you'll have a lot of success with.
Thank you so much for answering that, Jamie. I hope that answers your question. We have taken this question from the YouTube live chat box. I think last 5 seconds for the poll here, which I can see a lot of interest towards enrollment into the Utilities AML Bootcamp. So, last 5 seconds for are you interested in enrolling into the Utilities AML Bootcamp? So you can quickly let us know by sharing your response as yes in the poll here, and I'll be taking through the enrollment steps of the program very quickly. We have exceeded the time of the session by a few minutes. We'll just try to just cover it quickly because we have answered most of the questions we have gotten throughout the session. So last 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me quickly end the poll and take you through the enrollment steps of the program here. So the program fee, I think someone asked about what is the program fee of the UTLS AML bootcamp. So it is 8,000 USD dollars, and we do have EMI financing options also available for as low as $704 per month. In case you need more assistance, you can reach out to us at askus@simplilearn.net. I'll just share that email ID for you on the chat here as well. Just allow me a second. And also talking about the cohort here, I'll be sharing the upcoming cohort for the UTLS AML bootcamp, and also asking you when are you planning to enroll as well, just to get a ballpark idea so we can know basically when to reach out to you with the admissions offer letter and a much more detailed walkthrough of the program. But in case you need any assistance, you can reach out to us, ask us at simplilearn.net. Also, we take very limited set of folks per cohort in order to make sure you're getting all the attention that is required when you're taking up this program. And the upcoming cohort, the classes start on January 8th, 2024, that is next year. And also the induction also starts at January 8th, 2024. The learning consultants from Simplilearn will be reaching out to you, and they'll be taking you through these 3 simple, easy steps for enrollment. You need to submit an application to us at askus@simplilearn.net, which I've shared with you on the email ID here. And based on that, your application will be going for review. And based on that, you'll be getting admissions offer from learning consultants from Simplilearn. So now that I've shared with you the program fee and the upcoming cohorts and also the schedule as well, we would love to know how soon do you plan to enroll into the UTLS AML bootcamp? You can see 4 quick options here. Immediately, within 3 months, within 6 months, more than 6 months from now. I have shown you the upcoming cohort, which is on January 8th. If you, in case you're planning to join the immediate cohort, you can join that one. And apart from that, we do have like upcoming cohorts throughout the year. So you can select any of the last 3 options as well, in case you're not sure exactly when are you planning to join. So this way we will get to know basically when can we reach out to you for the admissions offer, and also take you through the admission process as well from Simplilearn's learning consultants. So I'll just give 10 seconds for the poll here. Folks, we have tried addressing all of your queries here with the amount of time we have gotten. We do have exceeded time just to address your queries as much as possible. So I will just quickly we basically go towards the end of the session after this, after knowing if you need any assistance in enrolling to the program. So last 5 seconds for the poll here, which you see on the screen. How soon do you plan to enroll in the UTLS AIML bootcamp? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me quickly end the poll. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And now we move on to the last poll of the session, which is if you need assistance in enrolling into the UTLS AML bootcamp. So this is for folks who have already shared interest with us for enrollment, which I saw a lot of you. And this is for basically folks who have already shared interest in enrollment, and also have let us know when do you plan to enroll as well. So if you need more assistance in enrollment, in case you're working professionally, you're very busy and you can't basically go through all the steps by yourself, definitely we'll help you out with that and other things which you need help with in terms of enrollment into the UTLS AIML bootcamp. So quickly go and share the response here. A yes or no. In case you need assistance, it can be yes. If no, then you can choose the option no. So I think I'll just give 5 seconds for the poll here, because I see folks have already started sharing their responses here. And we basically are towards the end of our session today. So last 5 seconds for the folks here. Do you need assistance in enrolling into the AIML bootcamp? So let me quickly end the poll and move on towards the end of the program here. So first of all, thank you for everyone for joining and being a very active audience. We have gotten a lot of interesting questions, both from YouTube live and also from the Zoom Q&A box and the chat box as well. So Jeremy, would first of all love to thank you, and it's always a pleasure to host you and seeing you basically take us through these program reviews. Would you like to say something to the folks here before we end the session?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for being patient and sticking with us while we, answer as many questions as we can. And, I realized went a little bit over. One last thing I do want to say. So, this is something that we mentioned, although we mentioned it rather quickly, but I think it kind of bears highlighting. So I think a lot of our students that I've seen, they get a lot out of the courses, they get a lot out of the projects and things like that. And then unfortunately, they tend to kind of underutilize the other things that are offered in the program, such as the, you know, interview coaching, a sort of job placement part after that. So if this is a thing that you're interested in and you choose to do this, absolutely do not pass up on taking advantage of those things that are offered. I think that part's huge. In fact, that's maybe one of the kind of biggest kind of value adds in the program, right? So the knowledge is important because that's what's going to make it so that you are able to do the job once you have a job. But you still need to get the job, right? And I've known a lot of people that are brilliant. They're so smart. They're good at the math. They're good at the programming. They know what they're doing. They would make a great data scientist, but they just fall apart in interviews, right? They just don't interview well. They don't present well. Their resume's not great. Things like that, which can really make the difference between whether you get in front of an interviewer or not, or whether you kind of pass the interview or not and get the job. So yeah, that's again really high value thing that was I think talked about, and that unfortunately a lot of people forget that we do once they're in the program. So yeah, if you're really struggling, if you're like, I'm not sure, I haven't been able to get a job, I'm you know not able to get in front of people or whatever, absolutely check back into taking advantage of that part of the program, because I think that part's really huge and a lot of people forget we do it. So
Definitely agree with that. And Jeremy, like I think we would love to hear from you someday about your experience of interviewing and taking
okay.
interviews, and also
That
maybe
would
few
be interesting.
tips on interview prep as well for AML. So maybe for the upcoming year, we would love to know
Okay.
your experience. I think we don't
Yeah,
have time
absolutely.
for sure for the next webinars as well. So thank you so much, Jeremy, once again. For everyone who have joined us, thank you once again, folks. Have a good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from, and a good night for folks who have joined from India. So thank you so much, folks. Thank you. Thank you. We're ending this.
Thanks everyone. See ya.